Imagine for a moment that you are standing at a crossroads. One path is wide, smooth, and easy, lined with comfort and short-term pleasures. The other is narrower, more uncertain, even intimidating, but stretching far into the distance, promising something greater. Now, here's the truth. Most people choose the first path, not because it's truly what they want, but because they never stop to ask themselves what they actually desire from life. And that's the tragedy. People don't fail because they're incapable. They fail because they never clearly define what they're aiming at. This is the first mindset of high achievers, clarity of vision. Think about it. If you don't know where you're going, how on earth will you ever get there? It's like setting sail without a destination. The winds could be favorable, the ship might be strong, but if the captain has no map, no compass, no destination in mind, all that energy is wasted drifting in circles. That's what happens to most people. They're busy, they're working hard, they're moving, but they're not moving toward anything. And the terrible thing about drifting is that you only realize you've wasted time after years have slipped by. High achievers do something different. They dare to decide. They ask, what kind of life am I willing to build? What is worth struggling for? What is worth the sacrifices I will inevitably make? Because make no mistake, sacrifice is unavoidable. You're going to sacrifice anyway. You'll sacrifice time in your youth, or you'll sacrifice regret in your old age. You'll sacrifice comfort today, or you'll sacrifice opportunities tomorrow. There's no way around it. So the wise question is not, can I avoid sacrifice? The wise question is, what am I willing to sacrifice for? That's where vision begins, the conscious recognition that your choices are shaping a destination. Now, vision isn't just fantasy. It's not daydreaming about being rich or famous or admired. Vision is concrete. It's specific. It's tied to values, to purpose, to meaning. Let me give you an example. Imagine two students in a classroom. One is there simply because their parents told them to be, or because it seemed like the natural next step. They attend classes, they submit assignments, but their heart isn't really in it. The other student has a vision. They want to become a doctor, or an engineer, or a writer who changes the way people think. They understand that every lecture, every book, every late night study session is connected to that future they see so vividly. Who do you think is more likely to excel, even if both students have the same level of intelligence? It's the one with the vision. Because the vision transforms effort into investment, it turns work into purpose. Vision is powerful because it orders your world. Without it, everything feels equally urgent, equally distracting, equally overwhelming. With vision, you can prioritize. You know what to say yes to, and equally important, you know what to say no to. The average person is pulled in every direction. Notifications, temptations, meaningless obligations. But the person with a clear vision says, no, that doesn't align with where I'm going. Vision gives you courage to cut out the unnecessary and discipline yourself to stay on course. But vision is not just about career or success in the conventional sense. It's about the kind of human being you want to become. Ask yourself, do you want to be remembered as someone who lived with integrity, who gave more than they took, who faced life's challenges with courage? Or do you want to be remembered as someone who drifted, who followed the crowd, who lived small because they were too afraid to define their own path? That's a terrifying question, but it's also liberating. Because when you start answering it honestly, you begin to see your life as a canvas you're painting, stroke by stroke, day by day, and clarity of vision is deciding what that painting should look like before it's too late. Now here's something interesting. People often avoid defining their vision because it makes them accountable. If you say, "I want to be healthy and strong," suddenly your unhealthy choices stand in contrast to that vision. If you say, "I want to be successful in business," suddenly the hours wasted on distractions reveal themselves for what they are: theft from your own future. Clarity of vision is demanding because it strips away excuses. But that's also what makes it so empowering. It forces you to align your actions with your values, and there's a deeper truth here. Vision is not only personal, it's also social. High achievers recognize that their vision impacts others, their families, their communities, even the world. When you commit to a vision, you send a signal: this is what I stand for, this is who I'm becoming, and people respond to that clarity. They respect it, they're drawn to it, some will even align with it, helping you along the way. That's how leaders emerge, not from authority, but from clarity of vision that inspires others to believe in something bigger than themselves. But of course, vision alone is not enough. You could have the clearest, most inspiring vision in the world and still remain paralyzed if you don't follow it up with action. This is where the second mindset of high achievers comes in: relentless discipline. And here's where many people falter. They confuse excitement for commitment. They get fired up by the vision, but then expect the path to be smooth, effortless, fueled by constant motivation. But motivation is unreliable. It's a spark. It ignites quickly, burns brightly, but fades just as fast. Discipline, on the other hand, is the firewood you stack carefully, day after day, until you've built a flame that doesn't go out. Think about it. Everything valuable in life requires discipline: physical health, discipline; building a business, discipline; mastering a skill, discipline; raising a family, writing a book, creating art, leading a team. None of it happens through bursts of inspiration alone. It happens through the grind, the repetition, the willingness to do what needs to be done, even when you don't feel like it. And that's the paradox most people don't want to face. Discipline often feels harder in the moment, but it makes life easier in the long run. Neglect feels easier in the moment, but it makes life harder in the long run. So you have to decide, do you want to pay now or pay later? Because either way, you're going to pay. Relentless discipline is about aligning your daily habits with your long-term vision. It's about asking yourself, if I truly want to reach that destination, what must I do today? Not tomorrow, not someday today. High achievers understand this. They don't wait for perfect conditions. They don't wait until they feel ready. They act consistently, imperfectly, but persistently. They know that the small, unremarkable actions, repeated over time, accumulate into extraordinary results. Consider this: if you improve by just 1% each day, you may not notice the change at first. It might even feel insignificant, but compound that over weeks, months, years, and the difference is staggering. The problem is that most people quit before the compounding takes effect. They want instant results, and when they don't see them, they lose heart. High achievers don't fall into that trap. They trust the process, they stay consistent, and they let time magnify their efforts. And discipline doesn't mean rigidity. It doesn't mean you become a machine. It means you learn to govern yourself, to act in accordance with your highest values rather than your lowest impulses. That's true freedom, the ability to do what is necessary, not just what is easy. Without discipline, you are a slave to distraction, to temptation, to the whims of your mood. With discipline, you become the master of your own destiny. Now, some people say discipline is restrictive, that it kills spontaneity. But look closer. Is a disciplined musician restricted when they perform a masterpiece, or is it precisely their discipline, the countless hours of practice, that gives them the freedom to express beauty through music? Is an athlete restricted when they execute a flawless move, or is it their discipline that makes that excellence possible? Discipline doesn't cage you. It frees you to reach your full potential. But here's the uncomfortable part. Discipline requires sacrifice. You cannot say yes to everything and expect to achieve greatness. You must choose. You must forego the trivial for the essential, the immediate for the ultimate, and yes, that's painful, but pain with purpose is infinitely better than pain without it. If you're going to suffer, and life guarantees you will, why not suffer in the service of something meaningful? That's what high achievers understand. Discipline turns suffering into investment, and just as vision creates accountability, discipline creates credibility. When people see that you are consistent, that you follow through on what you say, that you're not swayed by every passing whim, they begin to trust you. They respect you. They look to you as an example. And that credibility, built over years, becomes a form of power. Not power over others, but power over yourself, which is the most fundamental form of power there is. So the first two mindsets are inseparable. Vision without discipline is just fantasy. Discipline without vision is just drudgery. But vision combined with discipline, that's the formula for transformation. That's how ordinary individuals become extraordinary achievers. Human beings have a strange relationship with comfort. On one hand, we crave it. It feels safe, familiar, reassuring. It's that warm blanket on a cold night, that easy option when we're tired, that excuse we give ourselves when things get hard. But on the other hand, comfort is also dangerous. Because the more you indulge in it, the more it shrinks your world. It feels like relief in the moment, but it quietly steals your potential. And that's why the people who achieve the most in life are the ones who learn to value growth over comfort. Think about it. Where do you actually grow? Where do you become stronger, sharper, more capable? Is it when everything is easy? Or is it when you're challenged, when you're forced to stretch beyond what you thought you could do? It's obvious, isn't it? Growth doesn't happen in the warm cocoon of familiarity. Growth happens on the edge of chaos, where you're not quite certain you can manage, but you try anyway. That's why high achievers seek out challenge. They don't wait for life to test them. They deliberately put themselves in situations that demand more from them. They understand that the discomfort of effort is the very soil in which their future is planted. Here's a hard truth. The life you want is always on the other side of discomfort. If you want physical health, you have to push through the discomfort of exercise, of saying no to junk food, of choosing rest over mindless scrolling. If you want financial stability, you have to endure the discomfort of discipline, of saving, of taking calculated risks. If you want meaningful relationships, you have to risk vulnerability, confront difficult conversations, and sometimes walk away from toxic dynamics. Every worthwhile pursuit requires that you leave the safety of comfort and step into the unknown. Now, the problem with comfort is that it lies. It whispers to you, stay here, rest a little longer, avoid that pain, you'll be fine, but you're not fine. Because while you're safe in the short term, you're building weakness in the long term, and weakness is dangerous. A weak body breaks under stress. A weak mind collapses under pressure. A weak spirit avoids responsibility and misses out on meaning. Comfort gives you relief today, but regret tomorrow. Growth gives you struggle today, but strength tomorrow. You must choose which future you want, and it's not just about external success. Growth is about identity. When you consistently choose growth over comfort, you start seeing yourself differently. You start proving to yourself that you are capable of more than you imagined. That shift in identity is powerful. It changes the way you walk into a room, the way you tackle problems, the way you carry yourself. It breeds confidence, not arrogance, but the grounded confidence that comes from having faced difficulty and survived it. There's also something deeply meaningful in choosing growth, because growth requires sacrifice, and sacrifice gives life weight. Without growth, life becomes shallow, repetitive, meaningless. That's why people stuck in comfort zones often feel restless, even depressed. They sense deep down that they're capable of more, but they're too afraid to pursue it. High achievers, on the other hand, understand that growth is not optional if you want to live fully. It's a moral responsibility. You owe it to yourself and to the people who depend on you to become the strongest, wisest version of yourself you can possibly be. But growth is not glamorous. It's often messy, painful, filled with failures and setbacks. Which brings us to the next mindset, resilience. Because if growth demands stepping into discomfort, resilience is what keeps you there long enough to reap the rewards. Resilience is the art of getting back up. It's the stubborn refusal to let setbacks define you, because here's the truth: if you pursue anything worthwhile, you will fail, you will stumble, you will be rejected, doubted, criticized, and perhaps even humiliated. The question is not whether these things will happen. They will. The question is, what will you do when they do? That's where resilience separates the achievers from the quitters. Think of a child learning to walk. They fall constantly over and over again. If that child stopped after the first few falls, they would never walk. But they don't stop. They try again. They wobble, they stumble, they crash into furniture, they cry, but they get up. And eventually they walk, and later they run. That's resilience in its purest form. Somewhere along the way, many adults forget this lesson. They fall once and decide, well, maybe this isn't for me. But high achievers never forget. They understand that failure is part of the process, not the end of it. Now, resilience isn't blind optimism. It's not pretending that pain doesn't hurt or that setbacks don't sting. Of course they do. Resilience is about facing the reality of suffering without letting it crush your spirit. It's about saying, yes, this hurts. Yes, this is hard. But no, I will not let it end me. I will learn, I will adapt, I will rise again. And resilience is not just a trait, it's a practice. You build it like a muscle. Every time you face something difficult and refuse to quit, you're strengthening your capacity to endure. You're teaching yourself, I can handle more than I thought. And over time, that builds a kind of inner armor. Not the kind that makes you cold or indifferent, but the kind that allows you to face the storms of life with courage. But here's the paradox: you only build resilience through struggle. If you avoid every challenge, if you insulate yourself from discomfort, you never give yourself the chance to grow resilient. That's why people who chase only comfort often crumble when real adversity arrives. They've never built the muscle. High achievers understand this, so they don't resent difficulties. They see them as training, as opportunities to sharpen themselves, to grow stronger. And resilience is not only personal, it's also deeply social. People look to the resilient as examples. When you rise after falling, you don't just inspire yourself, you inspire everyone around you. You become a source of hope, a living reminder that it is possible to endure and overcome. Think about the people you admire most in history. Are they the ones who had an easy ride, who never faced hardship? Of course not. They're the ones who faced adversity and kept going despite it. That's what makes their story powerful. Resilience also transforms your relationship with failure. Instead of seeing failure as a verdict, you begin to see it as feedback. Instead of asking, "Why me?" you start asking, "What can I learn from this? How can I use this setback to come back stronger?" That shift in mindset is transformative because it turns every defeat into a lesson, every obstacle into a stepping stone. And if you carry that perspective long enough, failure loses its power to paralyze you. It becomes part of your journey, not the end of it. But resilience also requires humility, because when you fall, when you fail, when you are broken down, you have two choices. You can become bitter, blaming the world, blaming others, giving up. Or you can choose humility, accepting that you are not yet who you could be, but you can become better. That humility is the seed of resilience because it allows you to learn, to adapt, to grow from the very experiences that others use as excuses to quit. And there's something else. Resilience is not only about survival, it's about transformation. When you endure hardship and come out the other side, you're not the same person you were before. You're stronger, wiser, more grounded. The adversity didn't just test you, it changed you, it carved depth into your character, it gave weight to your words, it expanded your empathy. People who have suffered and risen have a depth that can't be faked. That's why their presence carries power. They've been through the fire, and they emerged forged rather than destroyed. So growth and resilience are inseparable. Growth demands discomfort, and discomfort demands resilience. Together, they form the crucible in which high achievers are shaped. There's a peculiar irony about modern life. We live in the age of infinite possibility, but also infinite distraction. Never before has so much knowledge, opportunity, and connection been so accessible. Yet at the same time, never before have people been so scattered, so easily pulled in 1,000 directions at once. Think about it. How often do you sit down to focus on something important, only to be interrupted by a notification, an email, a thought that sends you scrolling through your phone? And how much time vanishes into those interruptions? That's the silent tragedy of our era. It's not that people don't have dreams. It's that their attention is so fragmented, they never sustain the energy to achieve them. This is why high achievers separate themselves through focus. They understand something essential. Energy, no matter how much you have, is limited. Your time is limited. Your attention is limited. You can either scatter it across countless trivialities, or you can channel it into the things that matter most. And the difference between those two choices is the difference between mediocrity and greatness. Consider light as an analogy. A light bulb disperses energy in every direction. It illuminates, but only weakly. A laser, on the other hand, focuses energy into a single beam, and that beam can cut through steel. Human effort works the same way. If you spread your attention across every distraction, you may feel busy, but you will never be powerful. If you discipline yourself to focus your energy, you become unstoppable. But here's the problem. Focus requires sacrifice. It means saying no to things, sometimes good things, in order to say yes to the essential, and people hate saying no. They hate closing doors. They fear missing out. So they dabble, they half-commit, they multitask, and they wonder why they never make progress. But high achievers understand that mastery requires concentration. You cannot climb 10 mountains at once. You pick one, and you give it everything you've got until you reach the peak. And here's the paradox. Focus is not just about productivity, it's about meaning, because what you give your attention to becomes your life. If you spend your days immersed in distractions, in trivial pursuits, then your life becomes trivial. But if you focus on building, creating, serving, and striving, your life becomes meaningful. So the question is not just what am I doing, but what am I giving the best of myself to? That question is haunting, but necessary, because it demands that you examine whether your daily actions are aligned with the kind of life you want to live. Now, let's talk about the discipline of focus. Because it's not simply a decision you make once, it's a practice you reinforce daily. You wake up and ask yourself, what are the 3 most important things I must do today that move me toward my vision? And then you guard that focus like your life depends on it, because it does. You design your environment to minimize distraction. You train your mind to resist impulses. You remind yourself constantly of why this matters. And over time, you discover something remarkable. Focus creates momentum. The more you stay consistent, the more progress you make, and the more progress you make, the easier it becomes to focus. It's a positive spiral that builds power over time, but focus isn't just about doing more. It's also about being fully present in what you're doing. If you're working, work with your full attention. If you're with your family, be fully there. If you're resting, then rest deeply without guilt. The scattered mind is always half, present everywhere and therefore fully present nowhere. High achievers reverse that. They bring the whole of themselves into whatever moment they're in. That kind of focus is rare, and it makes everything more effective, more meaningful. Now, here's something crucial. Focus without purpose is dangerous. You could become incredibly focused on climbing the wrong ladder, chasing the wrong goal, or feeding the wrong desire. That's why the final mindset of high achievers matters so deeply, contribution beyond self. Because the ultimate test of your focus is not just whether it serves you, but whether it serves something greater. Human beings are wired for meaning, and meaning comes most powerfully when we step beyond ourselves. You can achieve wealth, status, recognition, but if it's all for you, it will eventually feel hollow. There's a deep emptiness in living a life that revolves solely around personal gain. That's why so many people reach external success and still feel dissatisfied. They climb their mountain only to realize it was the wrong one. High achievers avoid this trap because they understand that true fulfillment comes from contribution. They align their vision and their discipline not just toward personal success, but toward impact. They ask, how does what I'm building serve others? How will my work, my efforts, my life leave the world better than I found it? That question changes everything. It transforms ambition into purpose. It transforms achievement into legacy. And this isn't about grand gestures or saving the entire world. Contribution begins in small, daily acts. It's about how you treat people, how you show up in your community, how you use your gifts to solve problems and create value. A teacher who dedicates themselves to shaping young minds is contributing. An entrepreneur who builds a business that provides jobs and opportunities is contributing. A parent who sacrifices for their children is contributing. Contribution takes infinite forms, but the common thread is that it's not just about you. It's about lifting others as you climb, but contribution is also demanding. It requires that you step beyond ego, that you see your life as connected to something larger. It forces you to confront the uncomfortable truth that your time here is limited. One day you will be gone. The question is, what will remain after you? Will it be only a collection of personal achievements that vanish with you? Or will it be lives touched, values instilled, opportunities created, hope sparked? That's the difference between success and significance. Success dies with you, significance lives on, and here's the beautiful paradox. The more you contribute, the more fulfilled you become. Contribution is not the enemy of personal happiness, it's the foundation of it, because when you give beyond yourself, you tap into a well of meaning that self-centered pursuits can never provide. That's why some of the most content people you'll ever meet are those who live for more than just themselves, and that's why some of the most restless people, despite their wealth and status, are those who never discovered the joy of contribution. There's also something deeply stabilizing about contribution. When life is hard, and it will be, your personal ambitions may not always be enough to sustain you. There will be days when the weight feels unbearable, when the obstacles seem too great. But if you're living for something beyond yourself, you find strength you didn't know you had, because you're not just carrying your own dreams, you're carrying the hopes of others who depend on you, who are inspired by you, who will be lifted by your success. That responsibility becomes fuel, it turns burden into purpose, and contribution creates legacy. When you live beyond yourself, you plant seeds that grow long after you're gone. You may never see the full harvest of your efforts, but it will come. Think of the teachers whose lessons echo decades later in the achievements of their students. Think of the inventors whose innovations shaped lives long after their deaths. Think of the leaders whose vision sets in motion changes they would never live to witness. That's the power of contribution. It outlives you, so focus and contribution are not separate. They are deeply intertwined. Focus gives your energy direction. Contribution gives your energy meaning. Together, they elevate achievement from the pursuit of success to the pursuit of significance. And that's why the highest achievers are not merely remembered for what they built, but for the lives they touched along the way.